as you might imagine, in these cases, generally, with children that have been left in cars, the parents tend to report the experience of believing that the child was taken to daycare. I would characterize that as an output monitoring situation because they take the child to daycare routinely, the same way that we lock the door routinely, although on a much more important and much more serious scale. There's these instances in memory of them doing that, which leads them to not interrogate any of these indirect cues, because there's nothing special about the indirect cues if they assume, even unconsciously assume, that the child may be at daycare.
If I've taken my child to daycare 4 or 5 times a week for a year, I have a lot of memories up here of doing that very thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling us that it's possible that what we might think we remember is dropping our child off are the shadows of these former times, or these memories of these former times, because we've just done it so much?
I'm actually telling you that you may not even think. And then if you did think, it may still be hard for you to reason out effectively whether or not you did it. And I would never trivialize something as important as a child death. But examples help illustrate what we're talking about. Think about putting shampoo in your hair or brushing your teeth in the morning. You know you did it, but are you really sure? You know, and the reason for that is because you've done it so many times that it's hard to be sure on a local basis when you think critically about it. But that's because I'm requesting that you think critically about it. The same way the shoe, when you're walking, would tell you, think critically about why this is happening now. Whereas in most cases, on your day-to-day lives, you would never think about whether or not you brushed your teeth or shampooed your hair, because there's nothing indicating to you that you didn't. It's just an assumption that gets made based on routine behavior. And so, to bring it back to what you're saying, I think that in these cases, the parent likely never tries to monitor about what happened. They just believe that the child is at daycare, and that none of the information in their environment brings it back. Because none of the information is what I would refer to as a diagnostic cue.
All right. I asked you to look at this last night. I asked you to look at a specific piece of information that relates to this this idea of false memory in this case. And tell us about that and how it relates to what you're talking about.
Okay, so an example specifically from this case that's consistent with some type of false belief that the child was at daycare was made by Ross when he was talking to the police officer at the scene. I don't have my notes in front of me, so I can't read that directly for you. But he said something to the effect of, I thought my son was at daycare. Maybe he said, I could have sworn that I took him. I mean, this is the issue. And it's not an issue that's common. It's not an issue that only happened in Ross's case. In other cases where parents have had this tragedy happen to them, they report the exact same subjective experience. Well, some of them even go back to the daycare to pick the child up.
Is the statement that Ross made to the police officer then, in your opinion, is that consistent with these false memory that you're telling us about?
That statement is consistent with the false memories and this output monitoring situation that I'm trying to explain to everybody, yes.